Hello, 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 ladies. Welcome back to another episode of the Create and Grow Your Dream Business podcast. All right, ladies. So, normally, it's solo features, but today I have a special guest. His name is JP. Now, I'm going to allow JP to introduce himself, but I have to tell you some goodies. If you ladies are totally ready for a mindset shift, if you are ready to listen to a male's perspective, because normally it's women on here, but if you're ready to hear from a different perspective, from a higher level of thinking, that you want to put on your seatbelts and you want to scrap yourself in because JP is going to change your mind. JP, I'm super excited to have you on here today. How are you?
I'm great. Yeah, thank you so much. I'm really grateful for this opportunity.
Yes, 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 yes. Again, I'm excited to have you on here. So before we jump in, tell the ladies about yourself.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I'm a coach consultant. I do all types of coaching. When people ask me, I say it's the ABCs, always be coaching. So I can coach businesses, I coach people, I do creative writing workshops, and I facilitate mental health groups as well.
Yes, that's so powerful. You're like just an all-around mindset guru in a sense.
Yeah, 100%. It probably stems from my own story, but mindset it's unbelievable when you can see that we're responsible for it and we can create it. And it doesn't matter what happened in the past. It wherever we are right now, we can start and we can slowly create it and change it. And it's a habit, really. A mindset's a habit, and you can cultivate it and you go low, go slow, and eventually you got this magic mindset.
Yes, yes, yes. And so tell them about the mindset strategy that you use with the go low, go slow. Because once I heard you say it, I was already implementing it, but hearing you put it in such a quick snippet, it really changed my mind. So let the ladies know how they can implement that. What does that really mean? How does that show up every day for them?
Yeah, so it's just Lao Tzu, ancient Chinese philosopher, has a famous saying, and it says, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And that's pretty much it. No matter what you're doing, you got to just take it step by step. And so go low, go slow is just a philosophy to go farther, faster. It's kind of a paradox, but it actually is true, because let's say you're going on a treadmill for 1 minute, and then tomorrow you go for another minute and you're at 2. And by the end of the week, you're at 7. And by the end of the month, you're at 30. Starting out on day one to do 30 might seem like a monumental task, but if you go low, go slow, it adds up. And so you guys are doing this already in your daily life with whatever it is. And all you have to do is take a quick look over your shoulder and look how far you've come in the last 3, 6, 9 months, and you'll see that.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. For the women that are thinking, okay, so JP, I want to go low, I want to go slow, but every day I show up to work, I feel like other people are like superseding past me, or I feel like I'm putting in the work, but yet other people are being picked for the promotion. And maybe the women feel it could be like maybe how they look or how they sound or how they show up or maybe their personal branding. What advice would you give them to like shift their mindsets to let them know that they still have to show up authentically low and slow?
Yeah, 100%. So if you're feeling stuck, if you're feeling unaligned, it's because something's not aligned. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's the workplace. It could be another part of your life. But as far as the workplace goes, thankfully, we're seeing a lot of change. We're seeing more women in leadership positions, which will have a trickle effect that still might not have been there yet. But it's just about showing up. And if you're thinking that, like you said, if women are thinking that, then you're literally stuck in your mind thinking, and you need to maybe move a little bit more from your heart. And it's easy for me to say because I've never gone through some of these challenges. However, there's times when we need to zoom in and focus right in the moment exactly what we're doing, but there's other times where we need to zoom out. And this sounds like one of those things where we might be thinking too much. And if that's the case, then zoom out and take a long approach. Where did you come from? Because you definitely have moved forward, but also, where do I want to be? And like, maybe in this exact moment, that's not going to happen, but slowly we can get towards it. Another idea is to help to talk to other women in your group, because if you're feeling that way, you're not the only one. And if you don't say anything and you're just thinking it and internalizing it, then you might just not realize, but other women are probably feeling the same way. So connect with other people, and then that again gets you moving from your head to your heart. And once you move from your heart, then the solutions come and things begin to flow easier.
Yeah, and you said something so powerful too that I would love for us to touch on when you mentioned that sometimes we think the issue is 100% in the workplace, right? And sometimes that looks like the book, The Four Agreements, where we take things personal, right? So we might apply for that position and think that like we're maybe ready for leadership, or we might be ready to show up in certain type of ways. And when it doesn't happen, our feelings get hurt, but then we start to take it personal. And then, as you mentioned, sometimes it's not even about how we're showing up in the workplace, it's the work that has to be done outside of the workplace, which is like personally on ourselves. How important do you feel like it is to have that? Not direct balance, but that constant working on us as an individual and then who we are as we show up, not only like at work, but even like in our businesses.
Yeah, that's really good point. So definitely there's a holistic approach for me about everything, and there's so many facets. So the first thing I would do is sit down and say, okay, here's a chart. How are your relationships? How's your money? How's your job, finance, experience, health, emotion, psychological, all of it. And rate yourself between 1 and 10. And then the areas that are low, that's maybe something we want to work on. And even though we're talking about corporate or a work environment, we might not even go there for the first little while because we're working on this other area. And something happens once you start lifting all the other areas, everything kind of falls into place. So if your work is going good, but you still feel that kind of a struggle, then you have to kind of look at other areas of your life. And I also like the idea of that Don Miguel Ruiz book you just mentioned, the Four Agreements. And just for anyone who doesn't know, there, don't assume, don't take things personally, be impeccable with your word, and always do your best. And if you can do these four things, then you're detaching from that emotional response that you're talking about, but you're also just, you did everything you can do. And then whatever happens above that, that's where you got to surrender to a higher power that, hey, maybe this is happening for a reason that you can't see yet. You might not see it for 5 or 10 years. And then also it's important for women, I believe, to connect with each other. I mentioned it earlier, but it's so important because, and not even just women, everyone, but we can't see our own blocks. So maybe your friend, if you're coming at it with those four agreements where you're not taking things personally and you're doing your best, and hey, look, man, can you see something that I'm missing that I can't see that maybe is the reason for that?
Yeah.
And if you can try to detach from the emotion of it and not take it personally, you can get benefits. A really good idea for that, I don't want to use the word lack, but where areas aren't good and where you're not feeling aligned, there's this exercise called the 3 most important questions. And you just take a sheet of paper and you make 3 columns. And one column is experiences, one column is growth. And you touched on it, I'll get back to it in a sec, but growth is important. And then another area is contributions. And so if you're feeling emotionally drained, is all your focus on yourself, or are you focusing on other people? That's a good question to ask. But when you have these 3 categories, this is a blueprint to create a future that you want, a future that you wake up every morning and you're happy to get out of bed. And growth is a huge part. Like, just because we finish school and university doesn't mean we stop learning. Like, being a lifelong learner is probably the most humbling state you can be in, because it means you don't know everything. It means you're continuing to grow. The second you start to think you know everything, something will happen that will frustrate you because you're not going to know everything. It's impossible for anybody to know everything.
Right, right. And you know, that's so, you gave a lot right there. Ooh, all that was so good. I feel like you were talking directly to me at the same time, in which of course you are, but that was, it was so good. And, you know, even with the 4 agreements, the one that really stuck out to me as I was growing in the corporate space, because when I first got in corporate, I was 21. Now, of course, now I'm 30 years old, so I can look back in retrospect, but I was like fun and bubbly, and I'm still all of those things. But going into these new spaces, especially when women are young, or probably possibly not even young, but like maybe someone has taken a career change, and so maybe she used to work over here and now she works in this arena. Oftentimes you have to learn how to adapt in these different scenarios, and one of the ones that was really important for me was to be impeccable with my words, because what we don't find, or what we like look past sometimes, is that our brain works on autopilot, right? And so a lot of the things in the subconscious brain, we just have implanted in our brains. And so we think these thoughts of, oh, I'm not good enough. Oh, I probably shouldn't say this, or I probably shouldn't say that. Or if I speak up, they may think this, or maybe I don't have enough experience. Maybe I need more college education. And those things affect how we think about ourselves. And so a big part of being impeccable with our words is being impeccable with our thoughts as well. So that way we can see, like, wait a minute, you're speaking these negative words so fast out of your mouth because you don't even recognize that you have these negative thoughts playing inside of your brain on autopilot so fast.
Yeah, for sure, right? It's all conditioning, and we all have it, and you're running the program, and like, just feel this one, right? Don't think about this one, feel this one. What does it feel when I say this? Little girls should be seen and not heard.
Mm.
Now, a 7-year-old version of you may have heard that from an adult who definitely probably loves you. Maybe it's just someone in the community too, but that carries through your life, and it becomes this subconscious belief that you live into, and you don't even know why you're doing it. So it's important to do the program, reprogramming, I guess. And that's why go low, go slow works, because you can't change it overnight, right? It took you however long to get to this point. And so it's going to take you a little bit of time to change. And it's like an ocean liner. If you see this big ocean liner going in the water through the ocean, it can't just turn around. It's going to have to take a nice wide turn and go slowly, but it'll get there.
Yeah, and even when you mentioned the reprogramming and then you mentioned the ocean liner, it makes me think that sometimes I notice that as women, we don't even have the concept of reprogramming, right? Like that part is like so far-fetched to think, like, because you know, like when you're younger and you're growing up, and you don't even have to be young, like you could be 40, and you think like, well, when I just get 80, I'll just see what 80 looks like when I get to 80. And it's like, no, if you want 80 to look a certain type of way, if you already see how the first 40 years went, if you don't take the time to reprogram, it'll look the same way. Like phones, right? Oh, well, technically you can't see it because green screen, but phones, right? iPhone is not the same system as the first iPhone. If you have an iPhone 14, if they put the same system, things will look the exact same way. So it's like our responsibility to look at ourselves, our minds, our computers, our energy as a system that has to be reprogrammed if we want a different result. Because if not, you're just going to continue to get the same result. And to what you said about the ocean liner, even when we see that big ocean liner in the water, we have to remember that took time to build. Somebody didn't just press one button one day and that big ocean liner was created. Even the thought of it turning around, that took logistics to build that, right? Like it's so many things that have to be worked on in the meantime before we want the bigger goal. And I think as women and even men, entrepreneurs and people in the corporate space, we have to remember that sometimes when you're working towards the big goal, it's a lot of the little things that have to be addressed first.
100%. Whenever I teach these writing workshops, I'm telling you about, let's say it's a 3-month course, I'll give a little bit of a certificate for each chapter throughout. And so maybe the first 4 weeks is, let's call it unlocking creativity. And then the next is nurturing creativity. But at the end of the first part, I'm going to give a little certificate. And what that does, it lets you know you're acknowledged, you're seen, you're heard. It gives you a hit of dopamine, which will keep you going. And it's like a reward to keep going. And without that, it's really difficult to just keep going. So you need to Hey, if it's going to the spa by yourself without the boys, that's a thing to do. Something I would love to touch on, you mentioned about the apps, and we're talking about reprogramming and apps. So a very easy way to understand this is during pandemic, before pandemic, when it started, we all had Uber as an app, right?
Mhm.
And so you're the phone, and the apps are your beliefs and your programs. And so let's use Uber. We all had Uber before pandemic. What happened? Pandemic came, we don't need Uber anymore. So what happened? We installed Uber Eats, and now we're getting food delivered to us, right? Then the pandemic's over. Now it's time to change those beliefs, and we got to add in maybe a gym membership app or something like this. And so just like that, you can just change in and out beliefs as quickly as you can add and delete apps.
Now that was deep. That that was good right there, right? And what you spoke about too is recognizing the shift, and that sometimes things happen outside of our control. For instance, like you said, the pandemic. Probably wasn't even thinking about that the previous summertime, and then it came so fast. And so here we are now, where things happen outside of our control, but are how do we adjust? Right? Like, how do we come with creating the vision? Can you tell the ladies more about like the different phases, like the phase 4? Can you give them some insight on that, so that way they can have a more understanding of the power of creating that vision, creating that outline?
Yeah, definitely. You got to get silent with yourself and kind of do a deep dive. Where is your life at? And if there's certain things you want in your life, how will you get them? And you have to dream forward and think about your future. And so what does it look like? It looks like silencing out social media and everything, all distractions, and just get quiet with yourself. And if you start asking those questions, your intuition will guide you. When we talk about the feminine and the masculine, the feminine will come through and it will give you the answers. And as long as you can grab onto them. So the first thing always has to be awareness. And that's the very beginning. Because if you don't know, you just simply don't know. The next thing after that is beliefs. And I use an acronym called BIAS. And it stands for belief, intention, action, surrender. And so the very first after awareness is belief. You have to believe that once you're aware of what you want, that you can go and get it. It doesn't mean that you can go and get it tomorrow, but it means that, hey, I can work towards it. The easy example would be someone coming out of high school. They want to go to university to become a doctor or a lawyer. They don't believe that the next day they're going to wake up and become a doctor or a lawyer, but they do believe that if they go through this schooling process, that they'll get there on the other side. So the first thing is belief. The next thing is action, which would be going through that schooling process in this example. Or sorry, the next is the intention. So you believe you can do it. And then what's your intention? Well, my intention is to get a doctorate or whatever it is. Then action is going and doing it. And then surrender. It's back to the Don Miguel Ruiz thing. You've done all you can do. You've tried your best. And you use the pandemic's a perfect example, right? You might have had a business flying and doing everything right. And then uncontrolled circumstances happen. And so it's about adjusting, but it's adapting. And that's what humans are designed to do. If you go back to caveman days, like we're doing pretty good, right? We can figure out how to build a rocket, land it exactly where we want. We're figuring out how to go to Mars. And the shift, it's all about the shift. So awareness is the first part. And there's a really good movie on YouTube. It's not like a real good movie. It's more like a documentary, but it's by Wayne Dyer and it's called The Shift. And it's a free movie. And what it is, he kind of like starts noticing the awareness, and it's really clever the way he does it. But it's a really good movie for realizing, hey, there's a shift. Because if you're listening to this, you probably feel something that you were meant for more. And if you feel like you were meant for more, that's because you are. We are co-creators of our lives, and we don't have to just have these circumstances. And the word have, earlier you were talking about the way we talk to ourselves. And just this is the simplest one. Switch the word have to get. I have to, I get to. I hear all the time when I'm going to pick up my kids, I hear other mothers, oh, I have to go get my kids. I have to bring them to hockey or whatever, right? And I'm like, no, man, you get to. Like, you could be somewhere on the other side of the world, not even be close to your kids, or you could be working 3 jobs, and people do this every day, right? And maybe other people, they're not even physically capable of doing that. So you get to. It's a gift.
That was so good. You just changed my mindset from have to get, right? Because it immediately made me think about how, in order for us to create and grow our dream business, we have to we get to put content out there, right? But our minds do tell us like, oh man, I have to create content, I have to connect, I have to do this. And when you do make that one shift like that, and it's again, like we said, go low, go slow, like the butterfly effect, those small initial changes. And I'm just so happy we're having this conversation because, again, when we want to reach these big goals, right? Our mind, or even we see other people reaching these goals, our mind kind of gets set on the person, the thing, the house, the car. And then we don't even recognize that it's not even that. It's who the person decided to become, those small things they were working on in the meantime, like the gets versus the haves, or the appreciation for connections like this, right? It's those small little things that lead to the large initial shift. And so, like, I found the movie on YouTube. I'm going to watch it in between this call and then my next podcast episode that I have to record today. And what we'll find is that anybody listening to this podcast, you should be watching the movie The Shift today. Now that JP has told you about it, now that we've spoken about the shift, now that we are in alignment with the shift, there's no reason why you can't take those small initial changes that can lead you to the big overall changes, right? That's so important.
Yeah, for sure. As you're talking about being, that's the thing, right? And so I'm just going to read a little part of a story that I wrote in this book. It says, like, become a writer. So after I'm talking about all these other things that I wanted and that I started being, and it says, become a writer, become a thinker, become a speaker, become a coach, become a runner. Do you see a pattern? Become the thing that you want. The only person that can stop you is you.
Yeah. And can you talk to them? Let me tell you, here in Belize, they drive around and they sell like fresh corn tortillas, and the guy comes like at 7 o'clock and at 11 o'clock. So if you guys hear the beeping, this is just authentic life, okay? But um I would love for you to talk to the women about the concept of being, right? Because I think that that is in alignment with the mindset shift of get to do versus have to do, right? Like being the writer versus like, oh man, like I have to write today or I have to do this. What's your perspective on being?
Yeah, so you even nailed it earlier when you were saying, like, it's not I'll be happy when I get the Ferrari and I'll be happy when I get $1 million. You won't be happy then. You'll get there and you'll be like, oh man, that didn't make me happy. It's about becoming the person that you want to be. And so waking up every day, go low, go slow, take the steps necessary to become that person. And that's what it's all about. Then you notice when you're in that, when you embody that frame of mind, then you realize, hey, this is where it's at, right? This is the level I want to play at all the time. And so, yeah, it's great to have goals, and definitely like that's huge. Like that will pull you forward. If you don't have any goals, you're just stagnant. You're just like a flower. You're just without water, sunlight, earth, and you're going to die, right? So this is the way to pull it forward is by having those goals, but it's about who you become along the way. That is the most important part. And I think you said something. Oh, just about the little shifts, right? So when we're talking about being, that's definitely the feminine. And so maybe I don't even need to speak to this because the women already know, right? How are you feeling? And follow your heart. Question it. Is that right? Is that wrong? Is that my belief? Is that someone else's belief? But feel it more than think it, because once you get inside your head, then you're stuck, right? And even the part with there could be old school overbearing men bosses, right, in the workplace, and it's almost like they don't, it's not their fault because they're stuck in their mind. They're doing the logical masculine and thinking and this is, okay, here's a great example. I read this book on philosophy. He was talking about masculine, feminine, and he used an example was a rose. And he says, so the masculine looks at the rose and it sees a 12-inch stem. It sees 8 petals and it sees 26 thorns and it's green and red. And then the feminine, he just takes the flower and he smells it. And it's all about feeling. And I was just like, wow, that's powerful.
That is extremely powerful. And, it makes me think about, like you said, one, giving grace, because oftentimes we're in a space where we want to blame others for who they are in that space until we recognize that they're just who they are, and only thing we can do is accept people for who they are, not take it personal, but also recognize that life is a mirror. Again, right back to the 4 agreements, smoking mirrors to be exact. So oftentimes when we look at other people and we see things that we don't like or see things that we wish that they can fix, it's our opportunity to look at ourselves back inside that mirror and say, well, Breye'l, wait a minute. How's that inside of you? Like, how does that show up inside of you? And so that's one thing that I've always learned as I've been creating and growing my own dream business, is that I'm not going to take it personal, but I am going to look at others and recognize that the greatness that I see in other people who I inspire to be like, I have that same greatness in myself. And any negativity that I may see in others are things that have to be worked on within me.
100%. That you said it so beautifully. I don't even need to add anything, but it's a reflection, right? And use it. It's information. So the things that bug you about other people, that's some part of yourself that you don't like. And the things that you love about other people, those are the great qualities in you. And if we go as deep as positive psychology, there's a guy, Martin Seligman. He was the founder of the American Psychiatric Association, but he founded positive psychology in 1998. And up until that point, we would always look at humans and say, okay, how can we help the most sick and vulnerable at the bottom, right? And that was psychology. And then he came along and he said, wait, what if you're already doing okay? Is there a way we can flourish? And so he started developing these kind of systems of, he uses, it's called the PERMA model, but it's an acronym for positive emotions, engagement, relationships, meaning, and achievement. And if you can try to have all these in your life, and we're not talking about the people at the very bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs who need psychological safety, security, food. We're talking about self-actualization now. And so if you can get any of those 5, try to lift them as much as you want. But the really cool thing about that is if one of them is low, then the other ones kind of buffer against it until you can get it back up. And so I think it's just important. So another part of that, sorry, where I was going with that, he has a thing called a VIA survey, values in action, and it tells you your character strengths. So if you look on, I think it's called AuthenticHappiness.org. It's a University of Pennsylvania website, and you just look for the questionnaire VIA survey. And what it does, it gives you your top 5 character strengths out of a list of 24. You fill out an extensive 20-minute survey, but every person I've ever used this with is like, oh my God, that's my core strengths. And when you do with these core strengths is you lean into them. Instead of focusing on the areas that you're not good or you're not doing good at, lean into the areas that you're already good at and become great at it. Because we all have unique gifts. Even if you look at guys like Einstein, whoever these greatest people you can imagine and the heroes, they're only good at certain things. Like Einstein might not have been good at basketball, you know what I mean? But he leaned into his strengths. And so the idea with the VIA survey is it's going to give you your top 5 character strengths, super accurate, and it will teach you to lean into it so you can get better at that, because that's your superpower.
That is your superpower. Oh my goodness, JP, this is so good. So let's say now, as we bring this to a close, the women are ready to lean in, right? Like they're like, you got me. Like you said it. I'm ready to lean in. I'm ready to tune in. How can they work with you? What newness do you have? What are you offering at this time? How can they connect with you? Tell them about yourself.
Yeah, so my website's called the nextstepsacademy.com. You can find me there. Also on Instagram, you can find me at Next Steps Academy or at the Phase 4 podcast, which is a podcast I have. And on April 13th, 2024, I'm hosting a women's workshop conference with a bunch of virtual speakers, and I hope you'll attend. But the idea is it's a story of a woman's journey through life. And we're talking pre-birth to post-death with everything in between, including parenting, perimenopause, confidence, business, mindset. And so I brought together 10 or 11 coaches, and we're going to offer an all-day live workshop. That's April 13th, 2024, from 11 to 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. Eastern time. And right now, I'm not sure when this will air, but before Black Friday, it's going to be $297. And then after, it's $397. What that does, it allows me to bring quality people in to talk, and I can pay them a little bit. But there's also a website that is dedicated to this that you'll have lifetime access to. It will also have the recordings of every speaker's workshops. And for the people who buy it, they'll have the live question and answer as well. And for your listeners, Breye'l, I will give you a coupon code for 20% off that they can use.
Awesome. Well, I will surely ensure today is technically the 8th. I can have this podcast episode aired on this Friday. So that would technically be the 10th for you. And so that'll give some time for the ladies to tune in, and I will surely help you promote in the meantime. I'm super excited for today's call. I'm excited for your workshop that you're going to be hosting in April, especially with the fact of, again, this is direct alignment. It's for the women. So women, you have to jump in on this. You've heard everything that JP had to speak about today. And as you can see, he is speaking so purposefully from his heart and from his soul. And he has that desire to help you women create and grow, not even just in your business, but in your mindset, in your energy, in your aura. So as we wrap up this episode, JP, do you have any final words for the ladies?
Yeah, just stay tuned to Breye'l because you're just such a ball of light. I love your strength and your power, and I think you're amazing. And so create and grow your dream business with Breye'l Banks.
Yes, yes, yes. So thank you so much. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, I'll see you soon.